Good morning, Dr. Amalu. Could you please state your full name for the record?
Bennett, B-E-N-N-E-T, Omalu, O-M-A-L-U.
Have you specifically published anything regarding your opinion regarding the effects of habitual cocaine usage on life expectancy?
Specifically as a subject, exclusive subject of publication, no.
What about life expectancy in general?
Life expectancy in general, yes, I've published indirectly in papers and in my routine work. I'm an epidemiologist.
Give me your educational background.
It is quite long, so you want me to give you the entire spectrum?
Give me the short form of it.
Okay, so I attended medical school in Nigeria. It's a 7-year medical school curriculum fashioned after the British medical curriculum. 6 years of medical training and 1 mandatory year of clinical internship. And in my clinical internship, I worked as a physician in the departments of obstetrics and gynecology, general surgery, internal medicine, and what's the other one? Pediatrics. I delivered about 450 babies. I performed surgeries. I attended to live patients. Then upon completing that, I began work as an emergency room physician at a university hospital in Nigeria. I completed that, and well, I worked at the university hospital attending to live patients who needed urgent and emergency care, including all types of emergencies, trauma, and otherwise. While I was completing that, I applied to the World Health Organization to obtain a scholarship to come to the United States. I got the scholarship. I came to the University of Washington in Seattle in 1994 as a visiting research scholar in the School of Public Health. I spent 9 months in Seattle, and I went over to New York City to the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Columbia University at Harlem Hospital Center to do a 5-year residency training in anatomic and clinical pathology. Because of exceptional scholarship, the 5 years were reduced to 4 years for me. And I used my 5th year to do a fellowship in forensic pathology. Upon completing my fellowship in forensic pathology, I proceeded to the University of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. By the way, I did my fellowship training in forensic pathology at the University of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, under Dr. Cyril Wecht, a preeminent forensic pathologist. Wecht is W-E-C-H-T. Then I went back to the University of Pittsburgh to do a 2-year fellowship in neuropathology. I completed that. I went back again to the University of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to the School of Public Health to do a 3-year program in epidemiology, E-P-I-D-E-M-I-O-L-O-G-Y. I completed that, then went to the Carnegie Mellon University to the Tepper, T-E-P-P-E-R, Tepper School of Business, to do a 3-year program in business administration with a focus on medical management. I secured a master's in business administration. I also secured a master's in public health. I now sat for board certification examinations in 5 subspecialties of medicine, in anatomic pathology, clinical pathology, forensic pathology, neuropathology, and medical management. I became a certified physician executive and a fellow of the American Association of Physician Leadership. I did research, published papers, published books. I have 3 honorary PhDs for my work on brain trauma. and I've received the highest award any American physician can receive in the United States, which is the Distinguished Service Award of the American Medical Association. I've been referenced extensively in the medical literature. Books have been published on my life, and a major Hollywood picture has been produced based on my life and my work on brain trauma.
Have you ever given opinions regarding the effects of certain substances on life expectancy?
Routinely, so yeah.
All right, let's talk about your opinions in this case regarding whether Kisha Frazier, or Tijuana Frazier, experienced conscious pain and suffering. So tell me your opinion on your first opinion in this case.
What do you mean my first opinion?
Well, the number one, did she experience conscious pain and suffering? Tell me your opinion on that.
Yes, she did.
Okay. So the answer to number one is Tijuana Frazier did experience conscious pain and suffering, correct?
Yes, sir.
So where we left off, you stated that Tijuana Frazier did experience conscious pain and suffering, correct?
Just as a form.
And so, just so we're clear, she suffered conscious pain and suffering as a result of a gunshot wound, right?
Yes, sir.
I guess the second opinion is she did suffer conscious pain and suffering. How long did she experience conscious pain and suffering? So explain that opinion.
I should explain the opinion?
Yes.
Okay. So, Tijuana Frazier is a human being. And the established science has unraveled and described how and why human beings experience pain. It is a well-established, generally accepted principle of science and medicine. We know how human beings experience pain, period. So, being a human being who was asleep in bed when she was shot, she was sleeping, and the sleeping state is an arousable diminution of consciousness. So what that means is she would not experience any mental pain and suffering, pre-injury mental pain and suffering, the so-called fright, F-R-I-G-H-T, flight and fight response, because she was sleeping. So being asleep when she was shot means the period she experienced conscious pain and suffering will be decreased, and the severity of the conscious pain and suffering would also be decreased, because the bullet caused catastrophic injuries in her body. The bullet perforated, lacerated the chest wall, and in doing so, it created a one-valve mechanism. The pressure inside the thoracic cavity of a human being is at about -4 to -8, thereabout. While the pressure in the atmosphere is at about 760. So whenever you have a bullet perforation of the chest wall, you have an equilibrium whereby air gushes into the chest cavity, creating increased thoracic pressure that causes acute respiratory arrest. Because if the chest pressure is at atmospheric pressure, you cannot breathe. In addition to that, the bullet perforated and lacerated the lung. the lungs. And the lungs being very spongy organs with large amounts of blood supply, you bleed massively. And also there's leakage of air, again, into the chest cavity. So unfortunately, the bullet continued and perforated and lacerated the thoracic aorta. The thoracic aorta is the biggest blood vessel in the human body that emanates directly from the heart and carries large volumes of blood. So a bullet traveling at a very high velocity with large amounts of cavitatory effect would cause an extensive laceration through and through of the aorta. And she began bleeding massively, almost immediately, if not instantaneously. In fact, at autopsy, 2.5 liters of blood was recovered from her chest cavity. 2.5 liters of blood is almost 50% of the blood volume in her body. And so in bleeding, that is called exsanguination. Unfortunately, with the acute respiratory failure and the hypovolemic shock, meaning less volume of blood, the brain is affected. The human brain, though it's less than 3% of the body weight, receives about generally 15 to 30% of the cardiac output. And the human brain can only survive on oxygen and glucose. It is not like other tissues and organs in the body that can survive on fatty acids. So once you suffer such catastrophic injuries, you begin to lose consciousness within 5 to 10 seconds. Loss of consciousness is not a one-step phenomenon. It's a process whereby you pass through the varying stages of consciousness before you finally get into deep coma, which is the final stage before death. It's so the catastrophic injury, she began bleeding in 5 to 10 seconds, she starts losing consciousness. The brain has a reserve generally of about 3 to 5 minutes. It could be less than 2 minutes, could be less than 3, could be greater than 5, but the reference range we use generally is 3 to 5. And this is a process well established in science, whereby you use ranges based on the central limit theory. So the brain suffered irreversible brain damage at about 3 to 5 minutes. And once the brain suffers irreversible brain damage, you're pretty much dying. So based on the established science, she would experience pain in less than 3 to 5, conscious pain or suffering in less than 3 to 5 minutes. Could it be 1 minute? Possibly. Could it be 2 minutes? Possibly. But medicine as an applied science does not have the wherewithal to be more absolute than that. So like I explained, less than 3 to 5 minutes, and then death was immediate, meaning there was no intercepting factor between the bullet passing through her body and death. Death was not instantaneous. Death is never instantaneous, rarely instantaneous.
Okay, so just to summarize, as a result of the gunshot on April 6, 2019, Tijuana Frazier suffered conscious pain and suffering of, you say, up to a range of about 3 to 5 minutes is the general time frame?
Yes.
And what facts did you base these opinions on? I know you mentioned that you reviewed the autopsy report. Any other, what are the other factual basis for your report? your opinion here?
So, but from my opinion, I performed the method of differential diagnosis, whereby I first studied the patterns of trauma in her body as documented by the autopsy. So there is another method called trauma pattern analysis that I performed as part of the differential diagnosis based on the trauma patterns in her body, and also based on the modality of trauma, which in this instance is a gunshot wound. So after I had done that, based on the facts, you now apply the principles of science, the generally accepted principles and the established principles on the physiology and biochemistry of trauma and pain. So I combined all that as part of my differential diagnosis and then generated an opinion based on the differential diagnosis.
Okay. What assumptions did you make in forming this opinion?
I don't understand the question.
Did you make any assumptions in forming this opinion?
I don't understand the question.
Okay, well, for example, do you know what time she was shot?
I think I saw that there's an approximate time window of time that she was shot.
You know what time she died?
Nobody can tell you when any human being died. So all we use is the time the person was pronounced dead.
How do you know she was asleep?
How do I know what?
How do you know she was asleep?
Based on the materials I reviewed, the police report, statements, you said, my assumption is the narrative presented to me states that she was asleep in bed.
Is there anything that any materials that you analyzed that would be able to definitively say one way or another whether she was asleep when she was shot?
The materials collectively I reviewed confirmed that she was asleep when she was shot and she was in bed, and she was found in the same sleeping disposition when she was found dead. And the scene analysis and descriptions are also consistent with somebody who was sleeping in bed.
I just want to make sure I understand the distinction you're making here. So she did not experience any mental pain or suffering when she was shot. In that you are referencing the fight or flight response, correct?
Yeah, that I'm referring to somebody who was fully alert and aware of her environment, heard the gunshots, had a cognitive response to the gunshots. She was hit, became aware that she was hit when she saw the blood, and then was aware she was dying. So when you're sleeping is a state of unconsciousness that is arousable. So when you're sleeping and you suffer trauma, you do not experience the pre-injury and the contemporaneous injury, mental fight, flight, and fight, which is noradrenaline, NOR, then adrenaline. Noradrenaline being released by the locus ceruleus, LOCUS, ceruleus, CERULEUS, that is in your brainstem. So these processes take milliseconds, hundreds of milliseconds to happen. So because she was in a state of unconsciousness, well, that was arousable, she did not experience this.
But she experienced somatic and chemical pain and suffering of up to 3 to 5 minutes, correct?
Less than 25 minutes, yes, sir. And I must emphasize, the less than 25 minutes could be 1 minute, could be 30 seconds, but less likely to be greater than 3 to 5 minutes.
What are the effects of habitual cocaine usage on life expectancy? So tell me what facts you relied on in forming this opinion.
I don't understand the question. What facts in terms of what?
What facts did you rely on, and what evidence did you review?
In this case?
Yes.
Oh. Well, again, the narrative presented to me reviewing the case materials proposed, the case materials confirmed, proposed, alleged that she was a cocaine user. But even in addition to that, when you find cocaine in the blood of any human being, you could make the epidemiological assumption that that person is a chronic cocaine user. Why? Once you use cocaine once, there's almost 100% chance that you will use it again. And so the presence of cocaine and cocaine metabolites in her blood at autopsy, to a reasonable degree of certainty, suggests or confirms that more likely than not, she was a chronic cocaine user. But in addition to that, the narratives of the materials I reviewed confirmed that more likely than not, she was a chronic cocaine user.
So tell me your opinion about the, I guess, the effects of cocaine use on Ms. Frazier's life expectancy.
Well, cocaine is not a substance that is found naturally in the human body. It's not a prescription drug. Cocaine essentially causes harm to the human body and to the human brain, direct toxicity. So the effects from direct toxicity, especially the heart, it damages the heart, it damages your brain, it damages all parts of your body. And any substance that damages any tissue or organ in your body would definitely reduce your life expectancy. That is one. Two, because of the effects of cocaine on the human brain, cocaine makes you to engage in certain high-risk behaviors that are more likely to be violent. Cocaine increases your risk of placing yourself in dangerous situations and environments. So because of that behavioral effect, it also increases your chances, probability, or likelihood of suffering a violent or an unexpected and sudden death. That is two. Three, because of the direct and toxic effects of cocaine, especially on the heart. Cocaine induces enlargement of the heart and also arrhythmias of the heart. So you're more likely to suffer a sudden cardiac death. Cocaine increases the blood pressure. And once you have blood pressure increase, intermittent or otherwise, you're more likely to suffer kidney failure. You're also more likely to suffer a stroke. So all these direct and indirect effects of cocaine will most definitely reduce your life expectancy when you're a chronic user of cocaine.
The subjects who have used illicit drugs like cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and methadone can lose from 2.3 and 9.3% of their life expectancy to 10.2 and 31.3% of their life expectancy.
Yes, sir.
So there are 4 different drugs listed there.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. Of this study, do you know how many of them were cocaine users?
I don't remember exactly. I didn't go back to review this study, but most individuals are not exclusive single drug users in this study. Many people who use drugs use more than one drug. And many times these drugs are lumped together because the long-term effects are generally about the same.
So what is your opinion about the effect of cocaine use on Tijuana Frazier's life expectancy?
I've answered that the use of cocaine cannot be justified by any human being. There is no medical indication for the use of cocaine in any human being. Cocaine is an illicit drug that should not be taken by any human being because of the toxic effects on human beings. This is well established. This is not debatable. And so Tijuana Frazier consumed cocaine. And cocaine, many times, like I had said earlier, will place you in a situation or an environment that may increase your risk of sudden and unexpected death or injury. Okay? Cocaine, if she had not been shot, unfortunately, if she had not died, her life expectancy cannot be the same as the life expectancy of another woman of her age who did not use cocaine.
What does it mean that substance using mothers have an 8.4 times the mortality?
What does it mean?
Yeah.
What it means is what it states, that when you look at all-cause mortality, if you're a woman who abuses drugs, you're 8.4 times more likely to die prematurely than somebody who doesn't use drugs.
What is defined as dying how do you define dying prematurely?
Dying prematurely, dying suddenly and unexpectedly, dying from violent causes, dying from drug-induced causes, dying accidentally, dying by causes that are not natural diseases. Cocaine causing an enlarged heart is not a natural disease. It's a cocaine-induced cardiomyopathy, or what we call toxic cardiomyopathy. And it's well established that the use of drugs of all types will reduce your life expectancy. It is not in dispute. The years of life lost, the younger you are, the greater the number of lives lost. The older you are, the less the number of years of life lost because you're older. But as a younger person, if you die from cocaine, your years of life lost will be much higher. Cocaine reducing the life expectancy of an individual is not something that is debatable. It's an established fact. It's an established fact, period. That if you use cocaine, will your life expectancy be reduced? Yes, that's a fact. No doctor would dispute that. Now, like I have said, how many years reduced? It becomes more difficult because you can't be absolute. You rely on ranges. The younger you are, the greater the years of life lost, which makes common sense. You know, so the question, does cocaine reduce life expectancy? It's not debatable. It's not even an issue. It's a well-known, established fact. Cocaine use reduces your life expectancy. And the younger you are, the greater the number of years you're going to lose. Now, I'm asked, okay, can we determine how many years she would lose? I said, no, you can't do that because medicine is not an absolute science. It's not like mathematics or physics. So what we do in place of that, because medicine is not an absolute science, is we look at studies and descriptive statistics that have been published. And we use those to translate into legal utility or medical utility. And the data I have provided, if you want, I could go back and provide more, is indicating that the younger you are, the greater the numbers of years you would lose, beginning from about 10 years to up to 30 years.
In order to determine, I guess, a more specific range for how much life could potentially be lost, wouldn't you need to know the frequency of the person's use?
Okay, because of the effects of cocaine. Cocaine is not like oxycodone. Cocaine is toxic to the heart. So the effects to the heart are not necessarily predictable. You could suffer an arrhythmia at any time, will kill you any time. So in forensic pathology, the standard we use is, did the individual abuse cocaine, yes or no? And if the answer is yes, it will impact the quality of your life and your life expectancy, but it will even make you more prone to violence and more prone to, violent and criminal behavior. Okay.
What is the percentage chance that she experienced more than 5 minutes of conscious pain and suffering?
It's very low, less than 3%. And I'm basing it on the central limit theory. Plus or minus 3 standard deviation is 97%. So 1.5% on the right, 1.5% on the left will fall outside the plus or minus 3 standard deviation. So the chances that she experienced pain for more than 3 to 5 minutes will be about 3%. Given the configurations of her trauma, it's less likely that she was conscious for more than 3 to 5 minutes now. Remember, loss of consciousness is not death. Loss of consciousness is not death. So you start losing consciousness in 5 to 10 seconds. And 5 minutes is 5 times 6,300. So you're looking at almost 30 to 60 times the duration it takes you to start losing consciousness. So it's highly less likely that she experienced pain for longer than 3 to 5 minutes, given the configurations of the trauma she suffered.
Dr. Molly, what's the difference between mental pain and suffering and what you were talking about, Miss Tijuana Frazier experiencing conscious pain and suffering? Is there a difference? And if there is, what's the difference?
Well, there's a spectrum of pain. There's a mental pain and suffering, there's a somatic pain and suffering, and there's a chemical pain and suffering. So most experiences of pain and conscious pain and suffering would begin with the mental pain, because every adult human being has the mental awareness of imminent danger and threat to life. Because of primitive reflexes of self-protection, your brain responds and you have a psychological or mental response to your awareness of imminent threat or danger. So the parts of your brain that make up your mind will begin to release neurotransmitters and you suffer mental pain and suffering, the so-called fright, flight, and fight. They become fearful. Your heart to start pounding faster, you start breathing faster, you start sweating. That is the mental pain. And as long as you are alert and aware, the mental pain continues. It doesn't start and stop. The somatic pain is the pain you feel from direct tissue destruction and tissue damage. The chemical pain is the pain that begins as a result of the tissue damage. So in this case, we do not have mental pain because she was sleeping. So the lack of mental pain would reduce the duration of the conscious pain and suffering and the severity of the conscious pain and suffering.
Okay, so when you said that she had conscious pain and suffering, you were referring to the somatic and chemical pain?
Yes, sir.
Were you referring to anything else other than that?
No. The mechanisms whereby cocaine can reduce your life expectancy. Because cocaine is a stimulant, it stimulates your brain, brings out the animalistic aspects of you as a human being, and it removes your inhibitions. So you're more likely to engage in impulsive behavior, engage in self-serving behavior. You're more likely to engage in criminal behavior and violent behavior. And you're more likely to place yourself in environments that are associated with such behaviors. And so any increased proclivity to violence, to criminality, to risk-taking, unnecessary risk, would increase your risk of violent and sudden unexpected death.
Okay. I think you summarized it earlier in your deposition. You said that the use of cocaine will make you more prone to violence. Do you remember saying that? Okay.
Yes.
And your basis for that, at least from a medical standpoint, is the reduced inhibitions caused by the drug and the stimulant effects. Is there anything else medically speaking that would the coke?
It impairs your judgment as well, the toxic effects on the brain.
Okay. Have you seen anything in your experience, in your career, firsthand experiences and things like that, that support that conclusion?
Yeah, routinely, cocaine users many times, like in homicide cases, people who've suffered accidental deaths, motor vehicle accidents, they frequently have substances in their blood, including cocaine.
Okay. And I know it's kind of putting you on the spot, but you wouldn't be able to provide any kind of specific circumstances or incident things where you can remember that support your conclusions, or any kind of statistics or studies or anything like that? Or maybe that's something you could supplement later. Do you know?
What do you mean by specific substances?
I'm sorry, I meant situations that you experienced or that you were involved in analyzing, scenarios that show or that support your conclusion that cocaine will make somebody more prone to violence.
It's a very well established principle, not just cocaine, any stimulant. Right. PCP, methamphetamine, ephedrine. These drugs stimulate your brain, impair your judgment, and make you more likely to engage in unreasonable risk-taking. These are the effects of the drugs. And many times, there are instances over the years in my experience, somebody may jump out of a window and dies from blunt force trauma, and you perform the autopsy and it comes back positive for cocaine or methamphetamine. And the question is, what made him engage in such irrational behavior? Is the cocaine. I've seen cases, somebody on cocaine is driving at 100 miles an hour on a freeway. If you drive at 100 miles an hour on a freeway, you're more likely to have an accident. So these are real life experiences of mine in the hundreds. Every week, I have at least 3 or 4 substance abuse related deaths in my career. So this is something I'm very familiar with on very daily routine basis.